of how great you are. You are holy, great and mighty, the moon and the stars declare who you are. I'm so unworthy, but still you love me. Forever my heart will sing about it. What's driving these days? Are you still trying to earn grace? Why are you crying? Let me lift up your face. Just don't turn away. Why are you looking? Where will you go, child? Tell me, where will you run? So where will you run? I'll be by your side whenever you fall in the pit of night. Wherever you call and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, my hands are holding you. Look at these hands on my side. I swallow the rain that night when I take away sin, so I can carry you in, give you life. I wanna give you life. I'll be by your side whenever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, my hands are holding you. By your side whenever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, my hands are holding you. I love you. I want you to know. I love you. I'll never let you go. Your side whenever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, my hands are holding you. By your side whenever you fall in the dead of night. Whenever you call and please don't fight. These hands that are holding you, my hands are holding you. Blessed be
Please grab a chair and have a seat. Get comfy.
All I'm going to ask this time is half the room. It goes for you too, Lee.
What?
First half of the room.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you.
Alright. Really? I can't.
Oh my gosh, there's new people I haven't met yet. Oh, Travis. What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
I think this is the closest we've all been.
I know, it's good. You guys
It
are
feels
awesome.
like this
Stepping
is
it up.
the most people that we've had since a while.
Pretty good group today. You guys getting to know each other and not just staying in the clusters?
I
Starting
know.
whole family?
Who are you?
Then get on that. All right. So for those of you who have been here before, you guys know how I like to intro prayer. We need one person to start us off prayer. It's the Our God is Awesome prayer person. And the next person after that leads us into open up our ears, let us be ready to learn. Because a lot of times, we come into this, all of us right here, and all of us, each one of us, we have our own week. Nobody else in this room had a week like we had. We come in with memories, we come in with pains, joys, laughter, stub our toes, breakups, unbreakups, which I guess is getting together. We all come in with our own memories. But the cool part is God has been with us through each of it. So we definitely need prayer to be in this moment right here. This one. Where the feeling, the sensation, the fan, that thing that I can barely hear off my periphery. So, we need one person to start us off with the God is Awesome prayer person. Do you have something to say, or do you want to be the God is Awesome person?
Awesome person.
Yeah! Alright. You want to be our help us open up and listen and learn person? Alright. Let's bow our heads. Let's pray.
Father God, you have given me an amazing week. You've led me to new people, new families, new relationships. You've let a lot of awesome people get to meet me, and it's just amazing the fact that how much you've blessed me. Everyone in here is blessed in their own particular way. Certain people in here are blessed musically, others mentally and mathematically and whatever Italy you can think of. But it's because of you. You are an amazing God that we're all grateful for. And I think I'm speaking for everyone when I say we love you. Amen.
Dear Lord, open our ears to Grace's message. I know some of us may have had a good week, a bad week, but none of that matters now. Just open our ears and get us to take in the words that you've put through Grace to us, and just hope it helps everyone, whether it's good or bad, and just have it help.
Amen. Thanks, guys. had to grit my teeth a little bit to take the cold. I'd started to feel it about a half hour past. It started to set in, but I was determined. It's almost like the cold was a reminder of how stubborn and strong I had to be. And there I sat, really uncomfortable. I had been uncomfortable for a long time, but I wasn't going to cave in. I had been sitting there because my feelings were hurt. And not just that, I was confused and conflicted. But because I didn't want to give in, I didn't need any help. I didn't need to reach out for help. I'm fine. I can handle this. I'm a therapist, for goodness sake. I can handle my own stress. So, there I sat. In the dark of the night. Outside, it was getting cold, and I would not give in. How did it get to this point, you might ask? Anybody you guys hear about a building that burned down this last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my job. It wasn't my office, but I arrived at 7 a.m. Friday last week to my job that is burning. There is smoke rising. There were 5 fire trucks, hoses everywhere, firemen swarming in and out of the building. I have no idea what to do at this point, so I go in, and I'll make a long story short of the day. It was a day full of really distraught coworkers who had lost pictures of their family, childhood memories. All the things that my colleagues had in their office was burnt to the ground, and they were distraught. We were going in to a soaking wet. I had never thought about this being a part of a fire rescue. But the weird and most uncomfortable part about that, and what does the most damage, is the amount of water they have to pump into the building to get the fire to stop. Everything was drenched. Every single thing, and that's actually what did the damage. My colleagues were pulling soaking wet pictures, books that they've had since they were in high school. They're not ruined because of the fire. They were ruined because of the water. And we're sitting there watching what used to be, for the last 3 months for me, everything we've worked out of, all the counseling sessions, the groups, it's been our life. And it's charcoal. I have pictures on my iPad. That day, when I went home, I was expecting my wife to be very attentive to what I was feeling a very emotional day. So I was expecting her to ask me about how it went. And she did a little bit, and I told her, the building went down. She said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. Secretly inside, I'm like really confused. I feel really lost. I'm feeling emotional, but I don't really want to admit it because I also have told myself this little message in my head. It's repeating over and over again. Your office is fine. You have no reason to be upset. So I push back the emotion. That's not necessary, but I still want her to ask about it. And she doesn't really. And at that moment, I decided my feelings were going to be hurt. And they were. Really bad. To the point where the entire evening, I stared off into space in very quiet, kind of a stubborn rejection of the events. And she kept on asking me, what's wrong? Do you want to talk to me? I don't really know how to help you. And I kept on staying quiet. I was a little upset, and so the things that I would say were a little bit mean. They sounded kind of mean, kind of curt, but I wouldn't tell her why. Hours went by. And this is where I find myself. Eventually, after realizing that she wasn't going to see to my needs and wasn't going to be what I wanted her to be in that moment and read my mind and so that she could see I was upset, I told her I'm going to go outside and get some fresh air. So out to the porch I went. The sun had gone down. It was cold. Colder than I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a nice night where I could sit there and brood in peace and nice weather. No such luck. But I wasn't going to give in, because if I had gone right back in, that's just silly. Like, then I'm weak, and then I can't make up my mind. So I'm out there for a good part of like an hour and a half. And if you've ever sat there and stared for an hour and a half, you start to feel foolish and even more confused and upset. And there I was. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So I took this time. So you guys remember last week's sermon where I said this week I was going to come in and teach us tools to get over anxiety and emotional? Yeah. So I tried those things on myself, the things that I've used many times before.
Yeah, no.
I tried. I tried again. And I told myself it was going to work. And do you want to know why I told myself it was going to work? Because I had to stand up here in front of you guys and tell you guys that this should work. I'm talking to you guys about trauma and how to get through it, and I'm sitting here and I can't get myself through my own emotional craziness. I'm sitting here brooding outside, pouting outside, because my wife hurt my feelings. I know she doesn't know it, but I don't want to tell her. And I don't want to deal with it myself because I'm just upset. And I'm sitting here doing breathing exercises and all the stuff I learned in therapy, the very stuff I was going to teach you guys this week, and I'm like, this is crap. Like, my whole profession, it's useless. But so there I am brooding even more that the stuff that I had to share with you guys that I thought was genius, here I am, like, using it on myself, and I know it's not working for me. And so then, all of the messages, I failed you guys, I failed me. I'm sitting there outside, frozen legs, frozen arms, trying to find a little bit of armpit heat I possibly have left, rocking back and forth, you know, turning on some rock music, hoping that that'll get some adrenaline pumping to try to survive my own brooding that I put myself through. I wish it necessarily had a happy ending that night, but it didn't. I did go back inside, and I continued to not talk to my wife. I went through the entire night, nightmares. It was nightmares of either someone was disappointed in me, or someone caught me and I was embarrassed and I didn't know what to do. There was a lot of shame involved, but I woke up probably 5 separate times that night. The next morning, woke up, I go to church on Saturday, so I got ready for church, and I sat there on the couch, still feeling the same way, feeling abandoned, alone, but also trapped. Because I knew what I really wanted was to reach out to my wife and have her understand what I was going through, and I knew that she would understand. Why was I being so stubborn? Later that morning, when she was still pretty much asleep, and even, get this, even while I was getting ready, there was a moment where when I walked in the room to get ready, she turned over, like she shifted positions, and I was like, I'm rejected, she's upset, she's angry, I was that sensitive. I was taking everything and using it as evidence that I had failed. I had failed as a man, I wasn't as emotionally strong as I needed to be. The tools that I was going to teach you guys were useless, so what good am I? I can't even control my own emotions. All this stuff is going on. This is last week! This is real life. This is still what all of us go through from time to time. And you know what? There was a time when I forgot that this is what it was like. I eventually did. I tried the one thing I hadn't tried because I was tired of fighting myself. And I was able to say one thing to her, which was, I have no idea why I'm upset, but I'm upset. That was all I could get out. And from that moment on, it was easier. Like that one sentence that I said, just that one, reaching out to her. I cannot tell you why I'm so upset. I know that I am, and I don't know what to do. From then on, I said a bunch of things that I wasn't upset about. I tried the fire, I tried all that stuff, but I was able to talk after I said that one thing, and I eventually did feel better. But then that leads me back to this. Because what I was going to teach you guys today, and still am to some degree, is breathing exercises because they're important, and mind exercises to teach us how to cope with stress. But there's a more important lesson that I learned this week, and it is this. The road we take to recovery sucks. It doesn't always work the way we intended. You guys, we got hurts, we have pains. I expected that me, of all people that have studied this, could accomplish recovery, healing from a trauma, from a bad day, just like that. And I couldn't. That day, couldn't, with all the skills. It did not happen. And I beat myself up about it. Mentally, emotionally, I said that I had failed. I said that I wasn't good enough. These tools aren't good enough for you guys. If they didn't work, how could I possibly tell them to you guys? But it taught me something about recovery. When we've been hurt in our lives, people have hurt our feelings, when we're just plain upset, the road and the things that we try to get through our pain, not always going to work. I know that's a sucky thing to hear, but it's important because of where I'm going to go with it next. I'm going to go there right now first. I'm going to tell you guys the end of the message first, and then we're going to go from there. All right?
All right.
Or else I'm going to lose track of it. You guys know my rabbit trails.
I got good memories.
In the path to healing, there's a lot of times we feel like we can do it ourselves. There's a verse in Matthew that describes the healing process. And it described me to a T because it describes people that Jesus is disappointed with. Matthew 7. Jesus declared at that time, "Thank you, God. Thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you've hidden these things from the wise and the understanding, and yet you revealed these things to little children." That was weird to me, but I'll continue. "All things have been handed over to me by my Father," this is Jesus talking, "and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone whom the Son chooses to reveal him." And then he says this, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." What is a yoke? Go ahead.
Yoke is the stresses of life.
Yes, metaphorically, that's spot on.
Metaphorically, not physically, because that
And I mean,
would be weird.
historically, the word yoke, what is it? Go ahead.
Eggs.
A yoke is something that binds two cattle together back in the olden days, and basically, metaphorically, what they're talking about is this big weight that you're carrying over your shoulders.
Yes. A yoke is used, so they started to do this when they're a calf, when you're just grown up. And imagine this, if you're just born, imagine them putting something heavy on your shoulders. When you're born, and that's how you live. You grow up every day. You live, breathe, that's what the calf develops. They develop muscles and they get used to the weight. The weight is security, but the main purpose of this yoke is for guidance. They are training the calf to follow a path and to follow the person next to them, to follow the... Now here's what we do. Here's what I've done. And this is why it's confession time and why I'm telling you all this in the first place. When he talks about you've hidden it from the wise and those that think they have understanding, my yoke is easy, my yoke is light. That means during that time that I was struggling, I had my own yoke on. My yoke was the idea that I can do this myself. I can teach myself. I can struggle through this. I alone can accomplish recovery. I can handle my own emotions. That's what I was telling myself. Even using spiritual principles. When the whole time God was saying, no, I've hidden these things. These things are naturally hidden from the people that think they know it all. When in truth and reality is, children know it best. Tell me what a child believes about their parents, specifically when they're first growing up. And I don't mean not all of us have had good parents, and I know that. And our parents are imperfect, but typically speaking, what's a child's mindset? Go ahead.
These are the people who feed me, and I'm going to listen or else I don't get to eat.
I like that perspective. That's perfect. That's good.
Mom makes money.
That the parents are the strong ones in
Don't
the
make
family,
money.
that if you have problems with something, you can take it to them, they'll know what to do, they're the wisest ones.
Did you guys hear this?
That
You guys hear this? Say that one more time, a little bit louder.
parents are like the wisest ones in the family, they're the strong ones, you can take problems to them, they'll know what to do, and they'll just be like, look, we've gone through this before, we know what to do such and such, and you just kind of go along with it.
Yeah, if something goes wrong, you run to parents, right?
I run to little people.
Now, if we all know if you get hurt, who do you run to?
Mom.
Yeah. I'll run to mom. But if you need training in a sport or something built, who do you run to?
Dad.
It doesn't always have to be that way, but it seems to be the way. But parents, you're right. Parents become these like low-level superheroes. When I was a kid, I thought my parents could do anything. I really did. Oh, I saw this hand first, and I'll get back to you.
What did you say? I didn't hear it.
When Jesus describes what we're supposed to be like, he says, I've hidden a lot of these principles from the people that think they know it all. Instead, I give my wisdom and I give my instruction to people that are more like children. So what we're doing is exploring, what is it like to be a child? What does a child believe of his father, of his mother?
I'm not gonna lie, but because my dad's name is Peter, and I was 7, I was really into Spider-Man, and I just, every single day, I just thought, my dad is flipping Spider-Man.
I know, you're totally good, exactly!
I didn't know what my last name was and my dad's last name was, but all I know his name was Peter, Peter
Yes.
Parker's name was Peter, and I just put things together with 7-year-old logic.
That's-
He's Spider-Man.
That is the mind of a child. That's exactly what it is. That's perfect.
Spider-Man.
Well, what's cool is we believe that as a child. How many kids have done like the trusting running leap off of something high into parents' arms?
Parents are just sitting
I know. Yeah, I know, right? You're like, catch me! Sometimes when they're not even looking.
Exactly, yes.
I dress up to my bed and I said,
Now,
rock.
the mind of a child is exactly like that. And when God describes, trust in me, take on my guidance, my leading, it's basically, think of the yoke as like the hand on your shoulder guiding you through. Now, the real trick I learned in here is the reason I had my own yoke is because I believed at the bottom of my heart, at like the true honest level of my heart, is that God's yoke was not easy. I kind of believed that God was going to look at my struggling with this and he was going to be embarrassed of me because I was not succeeding. I lead people through breathing exercises and through mindfulness exercises, the things I'm going to go over in just a little bit, and they successfully recover. And here I am, struggling with bitterness, angry. I was pouting because I wouldn't tell my wife what was wrong. She asked a bunch of times, and I would not tell her. Would not tell her. Nothing could convince me to tell her because I could do this on my own. I can train myself. And secretly, I believed that if I did fail, that God would say, wow, you really haven't learned everything, haven't you? And you kind of do that cross arms disappointed look.
Like much wow.
I know, right?
Much wow, much
That's secretly what I believed about God. Now, when we're honest with ourselves, how many of us have felt at one point in time that God is disappointed with us? Not all of us. But at times, there are times we're afraid to go to God and take on his yoke because we're afraid he's just going to smack the hammer down on us. Go ahead.
But when you're having that hard time and you said that, oh, I didn't, like, God's going to be disappointed with me, maybe he's not disappointed for you. He's setting you in a path to where you can learn from it and not, he wouldn't be disappointed in you. Like, God loves you no matter what.
That's exactly what he did. So let me tell you the rest of this, and this is what's tying back into last week. You guys ready for this? This is going to be the ultimate magical tie. First of all, I need you guys to help me rebuild what happened last week. The message from last week was about trauma, and I need you guys to fill me in on some of the details. What do you guys remember?
You are terrified of swimming because you've had horrible experiences. Like, it was either 2 or 3 times of 2.
Actually, it might have been more, but yeah, go ahead.
15 times.
Yeah, swimming. Uh-huh.
And we were talking about like just how you cannot get over that trauma sometimes, and like. You know.
So let's leave it there. I want everybody to kind of get a multiple chance. So that's exactly right. It started out with me talking about how I developed a fear of swimming because certain events happened in my life that I couldn't quite get past. I saw your hand next. What's the other thing you remember?
You showed us the pictures of the brain before they were abused.
Say that louder, because I don't know if everyone could hear that. Say that
You
louder.
showed us pictures of the brain when it was abused and when it wasn't abused.
Yes. The pictures of the brain, what happens when you're abused and what happens when you haven't gone through abuse and the difference. Go ahead.
You guys stole my thunder.
Go ahead.
But anyway, more on that.
Yeah.
You showed a picture of like a kid who was in and out of adoption centers, being
Yeah.
abused,
Yeah.
barely had food and water, didn't have love, and it had a part of the brain where you make decisions that wasn't fully covered. And then on the other side, somebody who grew up with a good family and everything, had emotions all the way, and then the other person didn't. And
So let's break that down. Let's break it down to what it actually looked like for the people that weren't able to see it. When you talk about the two sections of the brain, so it talked about, it showed the sections that were red, and what were the red sections representing?
Active.
Blood flow.
Extremely active.
Yeah, I heard someone say blood flow back there. Yes, the things that are active in blood flow. Now, what sections of the brain, and she already said it, what sections were not active? For people who had gone through abuse, who had gone through a trauma, who had been hurt, what sections of the brain were the blood not flowing?
In like the decision-making area.
Yeah, what section was that? You remember?
The front part.
Yes.
I said that frontal lobe.
Good. Yes. No, that's perfect. It's the front part. Everybody gets, up here. The blood backed off, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so do you guys remember the consequences of what does our emotions and what does our thinking happen when the blood backs off from that area?
There is none.
No logic.
I knew it was. That's why I'm going to go with you again, because I knew that's what you were waiting for. Go ahead.
Someone who's like been through trauma doesn't have that. They, rather than like going through decision making, they go into a fight or flight reaction rather
Yes.
than making it through.
Yes, they pull back into instinct mode, fight or flight. That's exactly right. And for me, mine was flight. I withdrew from the situation. So the next part about this that becomes essentially important in recovering. So say we have trauma, say we have these moments where we jump to fight or flight instinct because there's certain events, whether it be a certain person, or I met someone who was, anytime she saw someone who was in a wife beater,
I don't know what.
an immediate, the wife beater, you guys know, actually I think I'm even wearing one right now.
What's
White beater shirt, tank top.
Shirt, tank top.
Mesh tank top, sorry.
Tank top, there you go.
I thought that was a common way to call that. My bad.
Very nice.
The undershirt tank top used to be called a wife beater shirt. And the person that I knew called them that as well, which is why it comes to my mind. She would immediately panic and she would start shaking. She could not control it. There was something about that triggered it. And here's the part about this. Trauma, the reason why it stops the flow from there, it actually stops our emotional maturity. So, we actually take that event and we carry it with us. We carry it around everywhere. Me, my swimming. I picked up that event and I carried it with me. I thought it was nice and comfortable. It made sense. Anytime water was in my face, and there it was, nice and comfortable. My reaction was the same as if that event was still going on right here, right now. My body, my brain reacted as if I was going through that same drowning experience when I was 5, even though I was in a totally different situation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
A little.
Our brains carry the emotional imprint of what it was like going through the trauma, and it carries it with us. And it begins to associate it with other things that are totally unrelated. Go ahead.
It throws you into autopilot, something that's really like, say, the autopilot is programmed to do something already and nothing other than that. So when,
I like that.
when something happens, it's like it's being forgone to where it's just, you're on auto.
Did you guys hear that?
No. Triggers.
Throws people into autopilot, to where their responses and their reaction is almost just instinct. It just happens right away. It just flips a switch, and you're not even thinking about what you're doing anymore, you're simply reacting. That's what trauma does. That's exactly what it does.
Is that kind of like blacking out?
Similar, except in this case, most of the time, people, you guys ever heard of the word flashback?
Yeah.
Flashbacks.
That's where flashbacks come in. You don't necessarily black out. What you do is your mind whips out that memory and says, this is exactly like what happened before. Ah! And in a very serious way, it's terrifying because it's truly, your brain is reliving the experience that you went through. Now, sometimes not to the fullest extreme, and sometimes it's even worse. Because a lot of times, our brains will pick up multiple memories and keep storing it in the bag. So that more and more things out there will continue to trigger that autopilot, that auto reaction. We start having freak out moments and panic attacks that we don't even know why we're feeling this way. Go ahead. And I got you next.
We learned about this in health.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of things. Like if you're scared of something, it's called triggering. And you see something that is related to it or is that exact thing, and it brings back flashbacks, and we learned about it in health.
Yeah.
And it could be the littlest thing that doesn't seem like it's related to it, but it's related to it, and there's thousands of things that can trigger like one phobia or traumatic event, and it could lead into panic attacks, bad depression, and all that.
Let's put that into reality, because I have an example that I heard of that terrified me. There was a girl who had been raped in an alleyway, mostly uncommon. Most of the sexual molestation, all of those things usually happen from someone that is a close member of the family. But in this case, it was a random incident. She had no control over it. But after it was over and she was recovering, there was one thing that triggered her and she remembered, and it was the sound of dripping water. Because she remembers that while she was there and she was trying to focus desperately on anything else other than what was going on, all that she could focus on and remember is the dripping pipe that was dripping water. And that's what she remembers. That sound, that sensation, hearing that, to this day, brings back all of those memories. It's the strangest thing, meaning it's totally unrelated. No one would think, oh, dripping water, that's going to remind you of this terrible event that happened. But it does. And when she responds to that, nobody understands why she's responding like that. It doesn't make sense to anybody else, but in her brain took that one thing, that one memory, and imprinted it with the horrible emotions that she was going through at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why the autopilot can seem way out of left field sometimes. Sometimes we respond with the strongest emotional reaction, and we're not even sure where it's coming from. Because our mind, our brain, is captured in that fight or flight mode, that specific memory. I promised I'd get to you next. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that the fight or flight, that kind of reminds me when I was going all the way from 5th grade to around this time.
Yeah.
And I was having a lot of trouble with bullying, and I was an easy target because I was short, and I was one of those kids that I didn't want to speak up.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I really couldn't. And at some points I did speak up, but the teachers didn't do anything about it. And it got so bad to the point where I was making myself throw up. So because if you threw up, that you would have to be sent home.
Yes.
And I was just so deathly terrified because of this one kid that I vividly remember, because she was the reason why I would come home every day.
Yeah.
And when every day I would come home, I would have more bruises on my shins than I left the house with.
Wow.
So let's just say I had 3 bruises on my shin. By the time I got back, I had at least 15. Because during lunch, for some stupid reason, you would kick me in the shins.
Yeah.
And I didn't find this out till a little later, so maybe last year.
Yeah.
But apparently his parents were going through a divorce at the time. He was bullying me.
Yeah, that's some hindsight right there.
And
It doesn't
the
justify
fact
it,
that
but
I was picked on by kids around my age
yeah.
so much to the point where, to this day, I still can't differentiate physically whether they're messing around or they're physically
Yeah. Triggers the same emotions, right? Anytime someone even jokes or throws a punch or something, yeah.
It just frustrates me inside my mind.
Yes. Good word about differentiate too. It's a good word.
I just still can't to this day figure it out.
That is a perfect example. I'm glad you brought it up. That's exactly right. I appreciate it, man.
That word is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah, PTSD, post-traumatic. You guys have heard of PTSD? Everybody heard of that? It gets thrown around a lot, but it can have a lot of different feelings. So let's take it back to my story. You guys, now that you know what you know, help me understand what I was going through. Why was I sitting in the cold? Just take a guess at why my reaction was that way.
Look,
I saw your hand first.
Because you wanted to cool down.
Because I wanted to cool down. Yes. It was cold. Unfortunately, I didn't know that it was that cold outside. But yes. Wait, here we go. Put up.
Wait, hang on. Wait. Government lightning shot.
I saw your index. Go ahead.
You were secretly hoping your wife would come outside and try and comfort you and ask you what really was going on.
That absolutely is what I was thinking. Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
So your index. Go ahead.
Is it because you told us earlier that like the best way to get over something like that is making connections, and she didn't make the connection at first with you, like to understand you better?
That is a strong point. Yes, that's absolutely true. And there's more to the story. So I want you guys to keep digging, especially what I just talked about PTSD and what happens with our memories and why our reactions don't always make sense. Go ahead. Whatever you want.
Just trying to get some quiet place where you could sort through everything you were feeling, just trying to figure out because you weren't sure.
That all of those reasons are correct. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Maybe there was like something in your past that happened and you were like, oh no, I got it right.
Woo! Ding, ding, ding. Say it louder. Say it louder.
You were like having like a flashback of something else, and because you couldn't deal with that, you were having trouble dealing with this.
Yes. Spot freaking on. Yes.
There's one over in the corner, yeah.
Go ahead here. Go.
I was gonna say your brain kind of went into like autopilot. Like your fight or flight mode. Your brain
Yes.
automatically went into flight mode.
You guys got it. You guys took the information and you freaking nailed it. Go ahead. Last one.
Was it because your water flashback due to the fact that everything was soaked and the
Not quite water flashback. Somewhat unrelated. Well, so no, let's take that. So what kind of a memory? So when I realized what I was actually upset about, I was more upset about my wife seemingly not caring, which let me paint the picture here. In reality, when I look back, she asked me a bunch of times what I was feeling.
Communication.
So why did I react? What was likely in my past? What kind of things did I experience in my past that I reacted like this? So
Someone who didn't really care too much, you thought they kind of went back to that same thing.
we're going to move forward with that because there's nothing going to be more accurate than that. We're going to move forward with that because that's exactly what it was. And guess what? In the moment when I'm sitting there freezing cold, stubborn, not willing, do I realize that I have that memory pumping through my brain to protect me?
No.
There was a time in my past. It was an ex-fiance that I had the first time I ever got engaged. The reason I proposed to her was because I was afraid she was going to cheat on me while I left to China for a while.
What?
Oh wow.
Wait, you went to China?
Wow.
Whole other story! Moving on!
Wow.
That'd be next.
But during this time, during that time, anytime I tried to open up, I was immediately kind of rejected for being overly emotional. So, and it happened over and over. For a year and a half, I was engaged to this girl. That developed an instinct in me that I should not give. I should not give in. I need to be strong. Because she kept on calling me, you're just like a girl. You're too sensitive. I have to walk on eggshells around you. See how tightly those are wrapped up in my memory? I remember those. All of us have memories and phrases that we remember that stick there. We remember it. Our brain takes it, and when something similar happens, or it even feels similar, our brain takes all of those messages and experiences and throws them to the right here, right now. And all of a sudden we're experiencing it. That's what happened to me. In that moment that I would not accept help from my wife, even though she was willing to give it, my trauma
Even though you wanted
froze me. Yes, I desperately wanted to talk to her. And I was frozen by fear. By the fear that I would be rejected, by the fear of going through the same thing that I had gone through years before. Totally unrelated, not even similar. She didn't even say the same thing. She asked. She was attentive, not even similar. But I took evidence and made it similar, which in her case she didn't ask enough questions apparently, and that was enough for me to brood about for the better part of 12 hours.
Wow.
All the way until the next morning. Do you guys see where trauma can affect us in ways that we do not expect?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can I say something about fear that I kind of learned from some motivational speaker?
You guys okay with that? Let's do it.
So, he kind of broke it up by the letters, and it's false evidence appearing real.
What?
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
What was it?
False evidence appearing
False
real.
reality.
False.
Yeah.
Substitute.
False evidence appearing real. Now, did he say more about that, or is that the extent of what you remember?
He kind of went more into what the Bible has to say, don't be afraid, how God always says, don't be afraid, or number 1 doesn't say stress or be worried. It says follow me and just.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I love.
Yeah. These kind of reactions are not in God's design originally. It's for the fight or flight. It's because of sin that entered into the world that our bodies and our minds and our emotions fall back to that fight or flight because survival is what's important. So that is an important system, and it is working as it's supposed to. But because of sin, it can lock us in this, I cannot pursue healing, I cannot do this, because we're assuming, we're taking all these memories and our brains are saying, oh, this situation's just like this. Now, are you guys ready to hear what has worked for a lot of people in breaking this? So now that we know that this cycle happens, we have to teach our brains that there is a difference between that old memory and the time we went through that and this one current now. One of the most specific ways we can do that is reminding our mind in the biggest times of stress, during the times when it wants to bring that on, reminding our brain of where we are in the here and now. Reminding ourselves that in reality, we're probably not in that bad spot. We're not in the same memory. So you guys ready to practice that with me? Because I use it all the time, and 80% of the time it works, 20% of the time it won't, and guess what? That's okay. Look around us. Each one, look around for a second.
Hi.
Each person that we see, each person that I'm looking at right now, has a different memory, has a different past, different traumas, different hurt feelings. Not everything is going to work for all of us. And that's what I had to learn this week. I had to learn that the process to healing takes God's intervention to show us where our healing needs to begin. Go ahead.
Wait, you said it sucked.
Yes, it can, because in my time of learning what I needed, I had 12 hours of fairly emotional misery. I was not happy at all. I was convinced that the whole world was coming to an end because I was reliving the memories of what it was like 3 years prior.
So pretty much.
So it's hard because, in a way, we have to face the emotions. In order to interrupt the past memories trying to come back and relive themselves today, we have to recognize what's going on. And it took me several days to do that. And it's taken me months and months, and even it was about a year of therapy that I went through just after that breakup to try to figure out all that stuff and the baggage, the hurt that followed me. It takes time, it takes energy, but guess what? I'm free of it, mostly, now. And I don't have to live in fear of my ex's name. It was Allie, by the way. Her name was Allison Anderson. Don't bother looking her up, because you will never be able to find her. All right.
What did you do?
Oh, that was a challenge.
Challenge accepted.
Okay. So the trick, the way this starts, and this is the same with all trauma therapy, and it definitely worked for me when I went through my own therapy. It's reminding our emotions that what happened is in the past. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, our response to that, fear, anguish, was real, and it needed to happen. But we need to remind our brains and our emotions that this is now, and it's different, and there can be healing. So, everybody get a little bit comfortable. Find a comfortable spot. Typically speaking, just sitting, comfortable, let your shoulders sag a little bit. Now, if you guys are uncomfortable closing your eyes, that's fine. You can do this with your eyes open, but it's a lot more effective if you close your eyes, and I'll tell you why. So if you would, I want you to close your eyes. When you're feeling stress, when you notice the heart pounding, when you notice the sense of anxiety, thoughts are going to go through your head. So here's what I want you to do. We are going to take 3 breaths. Each breath, we're going to go in, and I'm going to count to 4. We're going to hold it, count to 4. Breathe out, count to 4. And then hold that, count to 4. Does that make sense? So here, so follow my instructions, eyes closed, as comfortable as you can get. Now I want you to focus on the sensation of the air coming in and out of your nose. Can you guys do that? Yeah. So, on the count of 3, we're going to breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. I'm going to count to 4 every time we do it. So, 1, 2, 3, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 3, 4, 2, 3. Everybody look at me. This strategy becomes essentially important because during that time when we let our body relax, our mind and emotions are going to reject it. Our mind and emotions are going to want to convince ourselves that we need to have lots of thoughts, get up, move around, be distracted by any means. So what needs to happen is while you're focusing on breathing, focus on the counting, focus on that feeling of air, reminds us that we're in a room. Secondly, there are thoughts that are going to go through your head. What's essential in this process while you're kind of freaking out, every time the thought goes through your head, I'm in danger, I can't do this, I can't focus on this, I need to get up, I need to move. Look at the thought, look at it like a floating cloud, recognize it, oh look, there's that thought, just like you said it would be there, and watch it pass by and leave. Oh no, oh yeah, that's right, I'm focusing on my breathing. If you continue to focus on your breathing, go ahead.
So I heard once, it was, I think it was Bruce Lee or something like that, some famous like fighting guy or something. He said whenever like he hears like somebody say something negative or images something negative, he images that image, lighting it on fire and throwing it in the trash.
Yes, stuff like that works brilliantly. Imagine it catching on fire and falling in the trash.
I like watching
The thoughts will go through our head. Now remember, so when you guys did that breathing, did you guys feel that little bit of relaxation also tied with a little bit of tension?
No.
It can be a little bit uncomfortable because you have those thoughts going through, but you can also feel that relax. That sensation that you gave yourself was just a little bit of dopamine. And we remember what happens when you go through trauma, what happens to our dopamine system? It shuts down because we don't want to calm ourselves down. We want to survive, so it goes into fight or flight. What you guys have just done is allowed your body to calm itself, producing just a little bit of dopamine and reassuring your mind that you're in a calm, safe place, even when your brain is convinced it's not. This is just the first step in recovery from trauma and reteaching our brains to be in the present moment and not be tied to that bag of emotions that they want to keep bringing up. We're not there anymore. We're past it. Or if you are in trauma still, tell someone and get out as fast as you can. Because we know from seeing that picture the damage that can come from being in trauma long term. And we also know that most people, kids your age, don't talk about it. Either because you think you don't deserve the help or you think you don't want to get that person in trouble. You must, for your own sake, for your own emotions, for your own growing up, and living the life that God designed. Bring it up so the healing process can start, and you can cut off those memories being thrown in your bag and being basically regurgitated over and over when we least expect it. We don't want to be emotional wrecks. None of us do. This is how to retrain our brain, but we got to get out of the trauma first. If you guys are still in it, you got to get out. I saw a hand back there. No, change your mind. You guys saw this hand. Go ahead. And we got to wrap it up.
Sometimes when people like try to like speak up about something, it kind of hurts them more than just keeping it in.
Yes. And at first, that's the most important thing about this. In all recovery from trauma, it's going to bring up those negative emotions more so because they're going to object from the healing. And when it happens, then it's over. The beautiful part about healing is even though it hurts, even though it's like God cleansing us with fire, it's going to burn like crazy, but then you're free. There's no secrets. That's the beauty of being free from trauma. You don't have to hold a secret anywhere anymore. There is freedom. It can happen, and I've seen so many people be freed from that trap of trauma and what you're going through. You can be free and you can heal. You got to be willing to start the process. It's definitely better than living with trauma the rest of your life because I've seen people go to jail because they attack someone or even become an emotional wreck. They're unable to work. Anytime someone says something at work, it can ruin your life to have those memories pop back up and associate things that God didn't intend for that. Go ahead.
I mean, like what you said is right. Like it does hurt you when you finally talk to somebody about it, but it's good to let out that emotion because you've had it bottled up for like so long that as soon as you let it out, you feel totally relieved. Like after you've let it go, after you've told somebody,
my trauma that I went through last week, it was brief and not as not as severe as even the other stuff I've been through. I was able to get out one little phrase, and it was, trust me, it took me 12 hours to build up the courage to even say one phrase, and that was, I'm in pain, I'm really confused, and I don't know what's wrong. Once I was able to get that out, the rest flowed so much more easily. Just get out the first phrase and talking to someone you trust. We got to move forward because we got to wrap it up. The last thing I'll say, you guys remember the salvation talk? I said it's not about perfection, it's about, do you guys remember? Yes, say it louder. Yes. It's not about perfection. This process and trying to get through trauma and through bad memories is not about perfection. It's about direction, and God knows that. Have some grace with yourself, because God himself said his way of teaching us and guiding us is gentle and it's light. Know that about God. All right. Let's close and pray, you guys. We gotta close to the people. If you guys have more questions, feel free to bring them up afterwards. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for this group of amazingly brilliant people. Each person in this room, I learn so much every single day of the wisdom you bring through them. Lord, teach us to be like children and to trust that you are capable of anything, rescuing us. And that our methods of trying to heal ourselves would be so much faster if we just rely on you like a child would. So we're not so hard on ourselves, thinking we have to get through this alone. Lord, so many people here have been through a trauma, and we have memories that are coming through and just messing with us day in and day out, tormenting us. Lord, help us to recognize it, and with your help, guide us to healing. And it's not going to look the same for every person, and sometimes it's not going to be perfect. Now, you told us it wouldn't be perfect, but help us to head in that direction towards you, because you know exactly how we can be healed and be free of these memories and these pains. And that is why we love you and we trust you. The one constant in all of our lives is you. We love you, Lord, and we trust you. Help us to be there for each other just like you're there for us. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, you guys. No, we got it. Those of you guys who need to leave, the parents are already
Real
here.
quick,
Go for it.
I've got a very important